Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the third section of the Austin Sister Cities Business Protocol Training in partnership with Austin Community College, International Programs, and Continuing Education. Today's training is on Asia and Africa, which are our sister cities in Turkey, Thailand, India, and Lesotho. As always, we have Dr. Clark facilitating the training, and we encourage everybody to share where they are from in the chat and add their questions in the chat. There will be a Q&A section at the end of this training, which will allow everyone to ask questions and share their insights. Dr. Clark, I hand over to you to begin the training.
Well, thank you very much, Aditi, and welcome everybody. I hope you're having a great Friday right here in the middle of summer. And what a better way to end the week than to sit by with a nice beverage and maybe a snack and just talk about travel, which will sort of take us there too. I can't think of anything better at the moment. So thanks for coming aboard here. So yes, as Aditi said, we this is our second of our Asia series, and it also includes one location in Africa. So let's just take a look here, if you would. Our sister cities will be that are talked about here are Antalya, Turkey, Chiang Mai, Thailand, Pune, India, and Masaru, Lesotho. As you can see in this path, actually it kind of goes, as it turns out, a little bit like goes back and forth east-west, but we go a little bit north to south here. The main thing we want to look at here is that we're going to be going along our path. This is our main structure for today. We're going to be leading Austin, as it were, and we're going to talk about what it is to be a tourist, move to the level of explorer, then go to traveler, untrusted guest, and finally, hopefully, prepare us in our thinking and our attitudes to become citizen diplomats. And that's our ultimate goal here. And whether you happen to be on a sister cities trip somewhere, working with partners, or on your own, or in some other group, or with your family or friends, this can always come into play. I think one thing we all share here is that we love travel, that we'll give up something else to take a trip. We'll sit in the cargo hold if it'll get us there, not really, but practically. So this is something we can all connect here, and that's a rare thing for everybody to come together like that. Okay, so we can just talk here. If you want to say, you can turn on your audio, or if you'd like to put in chat, but just feel free to share where your name and your role or title, what organization or company you work with, and where are you? Of course, in Zoom, you could be come from anywhere. They even have the internet space station. You could be there. Let us know your city, region, and country, and what interests you most about a business protocol training meeting. Feel free to share that. It helps us improve and learn about who, our customers and our partners are out there. And feel free if you have a LinkedIn profile link or anything else, feel free to share that also. Okay, and we can always come back to that if you're writing. And in fact, you will be doing just a slight bit of work today because I'm going to have a quiz for you in just a minute. First, I want to give you a little bit about my background, how I happened to get into this. When I was a teenager, I was in a teen magazine. I think it was called Teen World. They might still be out there. Remember when things were made of paper? And they had a couple of staples in the middle, and they're real glossy, and they were lying out on the newsstand, the 7-Eleven. Well, because of that, I got pen, and there's something else you may not remember. There's pen pals. Where you get a letter from someone, it's handwritten, then you write back. You use a lot of envelopes and paper and stamps, and you start learning about other states. And then it turns out that the magazine also was sold primarily in Scandinavia and in Japan. So all of a sudden, I got Scandinavian pen pals and Japanese pen pals. It took a few weeks or so, or months, and that was my exposure to the world. Here I was in a college town in North Carolina. Next thing you know, I'm writing people around the world. Like a lot of people in North Carolina, between 7th to 12th grade, I went to cotillion. It was a way to learn some social graces. It's not so fancy as you might imagine, even in this picture, but you did have to dress up, learn to wear less cologne, be polite, stand tall, all the things your parents tried to get you to do, and you find out you really do need that later. And then once I was in college, I lived in an international dorm, and while in there, actually one of my years in the dorm, I also had a foreign student as a roommate. He was from France, but I lived abroad. I lived in Belgium, and I was in the French part. I was in Wallonia, and I traveled from there, gained new perspectives. Was on the uh, the Russian, the Belgian Russian friendship force, and stayed a good amount of time in Paris and in Birmingham, UK. And there's me, and I'm at an 8th century fort. It's both a monastery and a fort called Moi, with a real World War II uh, a fighter pilot's bomber jacket that a friend of mine's dad let me borrow. And finally, as I went into graduate school, I went into communication studies, in particular, what's called critical and cultural studies. So I've read a lot about this, I've written and presented, and that's what I do now. So thanks for letting me tell you about my own journey. I'm always interested in finding out about yours too, to see how you got to this place. One thing we all have in common, whatever you see up here, is this again a common thread of loving to go into other cultures. I just thought of last year, visited a friend from Texas who is married now and lives in Taiwan, and trying to talk to someone who didn't know a word of English. He only spoke Mandarin, and my friend didn't really know what he was saying either. Just that kind of strange excitement of talking to someone where you've got to figure out a way to communicate. You're trying to understand them and the culture, but you don't have the words at hand. That's the difference. That's a divide here. I think most of us find that exciting. We don't have to know in the moment. We're out of that comfort zone. And that's what we're going to look at today. So if you would just grab a little scrap of paper, the back of an envelope, anything you have. And what we're going to do here is let's check on what kind of visitor you are. I already mentioned, we'll see this throughout this presentation, this training today. There's really maybe 5 types, what I identify as 5 types of travel. This is my own formulation. When I hear on television shows like PBS travel shows and other people talking, and I read a lot, it's like, what does this have in common? That's what we do in my field. We find patterns. So if you have a scrap of paper, I just want you to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and write down A, B, C, D, or E for each of those. That's it. You're going to collect those, and we'll return to this at the end today. So if you could do that, we'll have a little fun here. So what I want you to do to begin with is to think of one country you have visited or one that you hope to visit. Could be both. And keep that country in mind throughout today's presentation, because even though we are covering 4 countries in Asia and one that spans to Europe in there and one in Africa, this could be on any continent. I just heard a presentation last week of someone excited to share the point that she studies meteorites. So the best place to get them, believe it or not, Antarctica. And she said she noted it was her 7th continent. Even that has a sort of culture there. I'm in communication with her because, if there's a permanent base there and people live there. So it could even be that, possibly, but just think of a country. Okay, now the first question is A, B, C, D, or E. Just write one of these letters if you would. It's just your visceral gut reaction to this. When you think about this country, what do you mostly think about? What do you mostly think about? Is it A, neighborhoods or places? Is it B, friendships or building understanding? Is it C, famous attraction landmarks? Is it D, everyday life and questions you'd like to ask? Or is it E, people who know me there and relationships I've built? Okay, so if you would, I will tell you that these are in a scrambled order at the moment, so there's not a progression here. E is not better than A or A better than E. So just whatever your quick reaction is, right? There is no wrong answer, just the one that best describes you. Okay, all right. And number 2, if I visited tomorrow, I would most likely do which of these 5? A, return to places I already feel familiar. B, look for ways to strengthen relationships or contribute. C, make a sightseeing itinerary. D, explore neighborhoods and observe daily life. Or E, connect with local friends or colleagues. Which one of these? Which one of these would you pick? So it's just a visceral reaction. By the way, if you happen to be taking any classes, I will tell you studies show If you know information that's not simply your feeling here, usually your first answer is actually the correct one. So go with what you think you know right now. Okay, that good? All right, let's go to number three. My conversations about this country would mostly be about which of these five? A, daily life, neighborhoods, food, local routines. B, ideas, partnerships, and ways to learn from one another. C, famous places, attractions, and must-see sites. D, questions I have about everyday life and culture. Or E, people I know, catching up and building relationships. So which of those are probably the main reason? Of course, there could be more than one, but what's the main reason when you think about this country you've been to or you'd like to go to? Okay, that's number three. Let's go ahead, number four, if you would. Uh, oops. Do I have conversations twice? Forget it. It's okay. That's a mistake. Okay, so the last one here, so skip forward. Let's go to five. After visiting this country, I hope people would describe me as. So this is the end part. After you've gone there a week, 2 weeks, 3 days, you're coming home. Would you be, I hope people would describe me as, how do you want to be seen in this? Okay. A, well-traveled and full of great stories. B, someone who discovered places and ideas beyond the guidebooks. C, someone who understood everyday life and appreciated local culture. D, someone who built genuine friendships and earned people's trust. Or E, someone who represented my community well and left a positive impact. Good. So sorry there, you only really have four. You'll see it'll work just fine at the end. We'll take a look at those. So hold on to that little sheet of paper and we'll get back to this at the end today before question and answers. Okay. So what I want to look at, here's our main structure today, is arguably there are five stages here. This is what I've come up with. It is based on what some of these people do and say and the definitions they use and other people use of them. But this is what I've come up with. And I'll admit there's a bias here because I've watched all of these people or organizations. And it's like, why is it, it's easy to think one is necessarily better. That's what we usually do. We know this. I've done this in other presentations, is not to see other ideas or other cultures as being better or worse, but simply being different. There is same and other. And some things are other, some things are more other, but it doesn't mean it's worse or better. It just means it's different. In fact, there's even argumentative fallacies that we talk about in communication studies, in public speaking. For example, the fallacy of the novel. That means just because it's new, it's better, or the fallacy of the traditional, just because it's old, it's better. They're both fallacies because they're not necessarily better. They're certainly different, however. So let's talk about that. Number one is the tourist. We can see it represented here by a camera. Rick Steves here is a guidebook traveler and sightseeing expert. Well, he's a traveler, but really he represents the tourist. No one wants to use the word tourist, however, unless people are upset. They go, there are too many tourists. They never say there are too many travelers, etc. But he embellishes as much as he can in this and owns it because what he says is he knows there are people that have limited time and money and are making the best of their, not only their days, their hours to get as much out of possibly, I hate to use the term, bucket list locations as they can. He knows that. He suggests sleeping on sleeper trains in Europe, for example, to save a night in a hotel. You're sleeping while you're traveling. You start one city, you wake up in another, and you can just check these off. So the question is, what can I see? Now, the second level is the explore, you discover more. You may have heard just 2 weeks ago, National Geographic's Museum of Exploration, abbreviated MOE, Museum of Exploration, just opened in DC. Oh, interesting. Right there among all the other ones like the Smithsonian's. So an explorer is curious, observant, always asking better questions. You look closer, therefore the magnifying glass the compass. You're digging in a little bit more. You notice details. They want you in the museum to go a little further. And that's what you might do here if you go a little beyond Rick Steves. You ask a question like, what can I discover? There's that joy of discovery, which is great in a museum and for here because you've got kids, you got teenagers, you got adults, you got everybody. And an explorer, a tourist collects places, an explorer collects questions. The next level is traveler. Now, usually this is the term that's used to avoid the word tourist. Explorer might sound like what we actually see here. You have to be outside with a compass. You have to have the right camping gear or something. But most of it's there's a travel channel, there's Travelocity. Things are called travelers. Now I would say Samantha Brown, especially in her Places to Love. You return, you learn routines and rhythms, you see beyond the surface. Her question to ask is, how do people live here? Now, Rick Steves, they don't have time. You might just spend hours in a location. I lived in Belgium, which was famously known for words like one of their old, of course, old towns is Bruges or Brugge, depending on Flemish or French. And people go, oh, if it's Tuesday, it must be Bruges because Belgium was a off point because it's sort of Brussels is the capital of Europe, maybe, or the European Union. It was just a stopping off point. But Samantha Brown doesn't say that. She goes, she's collecting experiences. She tries to return places. That's why it's places that she loves. Now, if you go beyond that, you get these deeply entrenched books generally, not TV series as much, is the trusted guest. This is what we want to aim for. We're aiming for 4 and 5 here. An example is the travel writer and novelist Paul Theroux. You may have seen not necessarily a show he's done. He doesn't do shows. He wrote Mosquito Coast. It was made into a movie, well-known movie, and it was popular. Writes a lot of travel guides, sort of in the sense of it's his experience. For example, Kingdom by the Sea is about the United Kingdom. He doesn't even go to the interior. He uses an inflatable kayak and goes around the coast. He doesn't like flying. He says it's like being in the air in a dentist seat. He's a different kind of person. He himself lives on Cape Cod, almost an island, and he lives on Oahu, Hawaii, which is an island. He even invented a word that I love, which is Nesophile. Neso, as in Polynesia, Peloponnesus, means a lover of islands. And I am too. I just added an island about 2 months ago, yet another island. I love islands. And he says, how can I belong here? You build relationships, you show respect, etc. And he collects relationships. Now, the last one we hope to build up to is if you get to be good with this last one, the trusted guest, you can be a citizen diplomat. Now, you are a citizen, but a citizen diplomat means you're not in an official capacity. You're not appointed by a state or municipal state or federal government. And that could be right here with our awesome sister cities ambassadors. Anybody who goes abroad, and you ask the question, how do I leave this relationship better than I found it? So that means that you want a more entrenched connection to this culture. You represent your community. Now, Paul Theroux is not necessarily doing that. He's not representing Massachusetts or Hawaii or the U.S., etc. He'll even admit himself that he's a little bit of maybe a little bit of an introvert. So a citizen diplomat builds bridges. Well, I've got a literal bridge here across, guess what could be Town Lake here in Austin. Okay, so now that we've covered that, I appreciate allowing me the time for this one. This is the structure of what we want to see today. So let's look beyond the postcard. So when I was in Belgium, I spent a lot of time in Paris, and I remember walking along. And as you do when you're 20 or 21, you sort of take things for granted. You don't go, I need to see this obscure museum or whatever it is. You're just walking along, seeing who you see, kind of sit around. And I remember this site here. This is, I believe, the left bank looking toward the Ile de Cité in Paris, where you see Notre Dame. Well, what's very typical there is there are a lot of North African merchants. They're there partly because they speak French. They're colonized areas of North Africa, and they sell their wares like this every day. And I saw this couple, I believe from their accent, they were from the Midwest. And the husband asked the wife, are you going to take a picture? And she said, I'll wait till these people get out of the way. Well, they're not getting out of the way. This is their spot. Pretty good, pretty darn good spot if you look at it there. In other words, he was looking for the perfect photograph. Um, but what I realized was the merchants aren't in the way. They're part of Paris. Things are not in the way of your experience. They are the experience. In the moment, it's hard to see. Pearls of wisdom only form behind you, even if it's the next day or the next hour. So you see that this is Paris. If you want a postcard, buy a postcard by all means. In fact, this is a pre-fire version of Notre Dame here, which is largely the same today, but merchants change out. But this is what Paris looks like. People talk about cultural contamination, or if you want the real thing, well, the real thing is what is there today. That is real. So I want you to notice at the bottom here, we have our 5 levels and how you might see a place like this area of Paris. The tourists like this couple, well-meaning, but in a hurry. They're probably there for 3 days before they head off to somewhere else. Ask, how can I photograph this? The explorer wonders who they are. And I know who they are because I watched them and I heard them talk. The traveler says, is this daily life? So it's Tuesday. Is it like this on Wednesday as well? Again, there was a book or something that said if it's Tuesday, it must be Bruges or it must be Brussels. But is it like this every day? Is it different on the weekend or Sunday? A trusted guest says, how can I respectfully connect? Because if you do connect with them, they are in some sense Parisian. They are in some sense French. A citizen diplomat says, how can I build bridges? Now, maybe not so easily with the merchants here, but maybe with the merchants you can barely see to the left across the sidewalk there. How can I connect things? We have people selling things in Austin. We try to make connections. Okay. So culture is the destination. It's not something that gets in the way of the destination. So whenever you're having a bad day somewhere and you travel and go, God, that's terrible. Remember, that is the experience. It's not around you. It's not in the way of the experience because you have an idealized view, and when you're there, you actually experience it. Okay. So let's take a look. I'm just going to have a few video clips here. Um, yeah. I want to just show you some brief, like actually two here at the beginning and one toward the end from the sitcom Everybody Loves Raymond. We're going to see Raymond as a tourist and as a traveler. It's a two-parter, and we'll see in the second a part of the second episode toward the end where he becomes, I'll just let you know, he becomes a trusted guest. It's just nice. So it's actually based on real life. Phil Rosenthal, the producer, used to get stories from people on the sitcom and say, let's turn them into a TV show this week. Well, one of them he had his own experience because he asked him the summer break between seasons. I think it was on 11 seasons. Hey, Ray, Ray Barone's played by Ray Romano. Where are you going this summer? He goes, I'm just going to the shore, the Jersey Shore or something. He goes, aren't you going to travel? He's, no, I'm going. So he got the idea for this where the mother on this, Marie Barone, saves up money to get the whole family to come stay in her aunt's house in a small town 30 minutes outside of Rome. And you get to see how Ray changes over the course of, I believe it's 2 weeks. He goes, oh, I got to use up my whole vacation on this. Of course, in the show, it's in the time period is 45 minutes, but it's pretty great. And they really filmed it there. So if you'll bear with me, um, I have to actually get out of the slides to do this so that we can keep it in YouTube. Hold on just 1 minute. So this is when they first arrive and see uh, um, Marie Ray's mother's aunt's house and how he and his wife, his brother, and his 3 kids and his parents are all going to stay in this small house. Hold on just a second. Oops. Oops. Oh, pardon. I'm sorry. I just realized that I need to, let's see here. Yeah. Hold me just 1 minute. I want to optimize. This is something I've learned here. I have to optimize for sound. Hold on just a second. We're doing clips, something that comes from a lot of experience. Let's see. Hold on just a second. There we go. Now optimize for video. So this should be it. Okay. Let's see if that is it. Yeah, here we go. So you get the idea here. Let me just switch out of here if you will. And we're going to go ahead to a little bit later scene where Ray moves from being a tourist to being a traveler. Hold on just 1 minute, please. This should appear right away. Let me just double check here. Isn't that great? Yeah, oh, isn't it? Communicating. So he's actually sort of becoming a different person there, as we can see. Let me get back to our slides here, if you would. So here you see Ray has changed within the course of, say, a week here between being a tourist and traveler, and that's big. Now, in between there is a little bit of he's an explorer as well, but we see this jump, and we'll see it again when he becomes trusted guest later in our training here. So let's take a look at how a tourist becomes a traveler. I'm basing this partly on what Samantha Brown does. She's traveled enough and repeats places. That's why places she loves, she knows them, she loves them, wants to share those in particular. She says to return to the same place turns a destination into a neighborhood. Now, if Ray walked down the street and had pizza again, there you go. Well, there's 20 places. Why would you return? Exactly. It doesn't seem instinctually the right thing to do. But what Samantha Brown says is the first time you go in a cafe, let's say you're taking a break, and you might start just to go into a cafe, learning the menu. You're just another customer. If somebody you've seen before, there's the familiar person behind the counter if they're there every day. The third day, she asks, is it the usual? She knows who you are. You don't live there. You're not a local. You're not a citizen, etc. You're not a native. It becomes part of your routine. Even abroad, you need some routine. By the fourth day, there's a conversation a little bit. And now, if it is in another language, maybe you're picking it up a little bit. You're picking it up, doing a little better. And you learn more about each other. And by the time you're at the fifth day, you're more comfortable, and so are they. They are a human being in the world as well. And maybe they're curious about you, even if they have a lot of tourists. We'll see that too, how you can avoid simply being in tourist areas. So we see here a tourist sees a place, but a traveler learns the neighborhood. This is a good way to go. It's not a trusted guest yet, but there is some genuine connection here because relationships create trust. You can't jump ahead to a trusted guest. There's no trust yet, but it create that level, but there is the beginning of trust. So if you'll pardon me, we only have this and one more that I have to click out of. If you'll pardon me here just a second. But let's take a look at this episode where Samantha Brown is in Hong Kong and has found just this little place around the corner from where she's staying. She goes to every morning. Now, of course, Rick Steves wouldn't do it because he'll have a list of recommended places for her. You'll get to see what the place is. But hold on just a second. And let me stop sharing. Oh, pardon. So let me make sure I'm optimizing again. Pardon 1 moment. Here we go. Let's make sure that's coming up okay. There we go. Good.
One thing I really love to do in order to slow my travels down is to create a ritual. I like to find what's going to be my place, and I'm going to return to it often. And people think I'm crazy for doing this because, like, oh my gosh, we've got to go to different places every single meal, and every meal's got to change our life, right? And I just don't believe in that. So I always find the place that I'm going to begin my day at, have breakfast.
This is Shui Wa. It's what's called a tea restaurant here in Hong Kong. And with many locations around the city, it is the opposite of one of a kind. And yet, it's a reliable local spot with little wait where one can enjoy a good meal.
What you see here is Hong Kong on a plate. Literally the history of Hong Kong. So we've got some beef noodles for breakfast, but with the beef noodles come scrambled eggs and a nice buttered roll, and of course, a cup of tea. And I love that. Travel requires like incessant thinking, right? What am I gonna do today? How am I gonna get there? Is it gonna rain? Do I need to bring sunscreen? Do I leave in 3 days? Did my upgrades come through? Like I just want my brain to stop. And the way that I do that is I return to a place that's familiar and it gives me comfort, and then I just relax. And I get to eat noodles with a fork.
So there you go. Let me optimize for sound now. So you see what she's doing there. She named the place. She gave it credit, but it's just a place she found. And you have the feeling here, not only on this trip she went repeatedly, but when she goes back to Hong Kong to revisit it for her own purposes, probably bringing her husband and kids, and for her show and her writing, she's become a traveler. She didn't say anything special. She's probably the only tourist in there or traveler in there. But you'll notice she has time for this. So here's the thing. Let's say, I know your time is limited. Let's say you're going to be doing your ambassadorship. You're going to be meeting with a partner, say on Monday. Well, maybe you're very busy at work. Maybe you could take Friday off, fly out Thursday, and you've got a whole weekend to do what both Ray and Samantha are doing here to get your grounding, even if you've been there 10 times, to get your grounding. Places change, establishments change. I constantly look up places in Austin like, oh, look at, oh, wait, permanently closed. Okay. I have to learn it, even though I live here. Okay. So I did this myself. One of my favorite places I've ever been was just, I think it's a chain. This is one on the chain called Moku Moku. It's in Kyoto, Japan. And it's sort of a buffet, but it is bento box style buffet. So each little square is actually, it's a very small, has like 16 or 25 little squares, has a sort of a morsel of food, and they're all just delicious. You can have tea. And I found I went there 2 days in a row. And at first I was like, I shouldn't do this. I'm only here a few days. But I found it gave me grounding. And I got to see some familiar faces, and they noticed mine, like, oh, you must be here more than a few hours. This is great. So if you're overwhelmed, you see what Samantha Brown does there. She gives us a nice history about types of food, but she can just catch her breath and not worry about all the logistics. You are a person trying to adapt, and you need grounding, even if everything else is different. This can help normalize the experience, foster resilience, and get you through the rest of your day. Now, another one, this is also my own reckoning. I have a rule for myself when I go somewhere new, and this even applies to other states or other parts of the country, that I go to a Starbucks. Now you go, well, we got Starbucks. Like, well, of course we do. But what's interesting is that all Starbucks, even if they have a certain style, they have a similarity of style, they're all a little different. So when you travel, one of the things you can do is, this is what I did with no electronic devices. I sit in a Starbucks for 90 minutes. You go, that's a long time. It's like, that's right. You can read. Paul Theroux, in fact, recommends reading a travel book that's about a different place, in fact. So you're not reading about where you're sitting. It takes you out of yourself and then it gives you some grounding. So you go to a Starbucks, you can see right here, this could be really anywhere. In fact, I think there's only maybe a couple of countries in Europe, for example, that do not have Starbucks. At one point, believe it or not, Italy did. I think because of the problems with getting there, places like Iceland don't have a Starbucks. They have their own coffee shops, of course. It's kind of created this trend. But while you're sitting there, what's common about Starbucks is your settling point, like Samantha Brown's local cafe or tea restaurant. So wherever you go, it's the similarity. And then you have this. Now, I didn't actually get pictures. I had to generate these. But I was in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and I noticed the cops had a lot of gear on. They come into the place, and they were kind of a little stoic. They stood apart. But then I was in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and went to, for some reason, I do not know why, there's only one Starbucks in all of Puerto Rico, and it's in San Juan toward the harbor. They were dressed more lightly, partly because of probably warmer weather in part, but the culture is different. it's that even the word for police is different, isn't it? And I saw them when they came in, they sort of hugged each other. So the thing is, I may not have noticed that if I did not have the grounding of the Starbucks, the same signs, really the same beverages, etc. People like the universal nature. And those are the things you notice if you settle down somewhere. You're going to have plenty of time, but you need to settle. You need to see yourself slow down. The water around you is going faster. And you go, I don't have time for this. I got to meet with partners. I got to learn more about the culture. This is the culture because the grounding point is the familiarity of Starbucks. But what's new about it is the people in there. Okay, good. So here we go. There's another rule too. You may have heard of the half-mile rule, or sometimes people call it the 3-block rule. That is when you go somewhere that's near tourist things, it's the same thing over and over again. You already know this. I'm sure most of you know this. If you go somewhere in a big city, if the menu is all in English and it's outside and there's pictures of the food, and this is made for tourists. There's nothing wrong with that because it's fast and easy. You don't have to translate. Use Google Translate. Don't have to learn the words, that sort of thing. But if you go to the second level, you go a little further, there's a community cafe, there's a local store, that's where residents go. So what you do is you go to a landmark and you go simply down a side street. No one else is going down that side street. And you find this cafe. That's what makes it different. It doesn't have to be a half mile, even a few blocks. You'll find that you're in a place that only has locals. Now, my own example, I have a picture here. I was in Piccadilly Circus, like Times Square in London. There was a cacophony. There was even like, restaurants like TGI Fridays, things like that. It's fun watching tourists because they don't have restrooms within the place. There's public restrooms everywhere. And I was like, I gotta get away from the noise. I walked down the street. I found this cafe and I ordered a sandwich and I'm about to grab for it. He says, hold on. And he wanted to carefully cut it in half and put garnish around it. Because I was clearly the first customer in at least the hour. It looked like no one was in there. It was wonderful. I got to slow down. It's quiet. By the way, you can do that right here in the US. If you ever hear the cacophony, even in the daytime of Bourbon Street, New Orleans, for example, go a block or two in either direction, perpendicular, and you will come upon some peace and quiet. And you get to settle in. Number one. Number two, you get to see what people who live there do. And you get to live it as locals do. Okay. Now, those are my suggestions. Maybe you have a favorite trip that's sort of symbolized by an image here. And what do you remember most about it? What landmark did you see? What conversations did you have? The main thing to look at is, did you notice places or did you notice people? Was it places or people? Was it a combination? Was one outweighing the other? That's the beauty of this, is that you remember things in different ways the more you travel. Now, if you ask most people that haven't traveled very much, I really want to see, and they'll fill in the blank. I want to see the Eiffel Tower. That's what they think of Paris. It is. Eiffel Tower is a real place. I went there one night just because I realized I hadn't seen it in a while. It's lit up. It's kind of beautiful when you're up close. And I went one block the other way to the Champ de Mars. It's kind of like the Champs-Élysées. And there's, I guess, a military college there. And these guys were kicking around a soccer ball, wanted to know if I wanted to play it. Well, I don't know how to play soccer, but I kicked it anyway. So, just like Ray did on the streets in that small town in Italy. So what I remember is some beautiful, the way they keep up even the smallest gardens in Paris. I remember the place, but I remember the guys I got to kick a soccer ball around with who didn't care that, I could have understood some of their French, but I got to kick a soccer ball. And that's still in my memory. And that's how I connect. Okay. Now, if we look at another writer, Adam Gopnik, he writes for the New Yorker, and he wrote about, he lived in Paris. He was there as a writer. He was going to be there 5 years with his wife, his son, and his soon-to-be daughter. His wife was about to give birth in Paris. It was called Paris to the Moon. Now, one of the things interesting about this, he said that a city shouldn't be just beautiful, but it should also be full. And he realized being there that he couldn't have both in equal measure. His son did better. He had to meet with his son's teacher, and they kind of gave him the sad look because the son and the teacher spoke better French than he did, even though he's originally from Montreal. So what we learned from Adam Gopnik is that the places you see like temples and shrines and monuments and skylines and palaces are what make it beautiful. But full is what everyday life is, and you can't have both in full measure. So he said Paris was beautiful but not full, and he moved back to New York, he said, which is full but not so beautiful. And if you live there, you're not as enamored with the things that tourists love to see. As Fran Lebowitz famously said in a recent series, when tourists misbehave, they get in the way, they block the sidewalk. It's a city because she sees New York as full, not so much as beautiful. But you can have a balance of this. You can see things, but also go into a cafe down the street. You see this middle picture, one of my absolute favorite things in Taipei when I was there last year is night markets. It's not only these big open markets, but they're open at night. And for a country that is not as populous as other places, it had an amazing number of mini malls and high-rise malls and these markets. It was wonderful. Okay, so you have to decide which you would like. Which would you like? Would you like to see these beautiful places at sunset, say, for example? It's a perfect golden hour to take pictures. Or would you rather be at that tiny ramen shop down the street that only the locals know about, trying a local dish that cost you $2? It's not in a Michelin guide. It won't be in the guidebook. Think about that. When you're thinking about these things, it's not one or the other, but you have to make choices with your time and energy and your money and everything else. Which is more important to you? Okay. Now, to add a little bit more to this, the writer again, Paul Theroux said, "Go where they don't want you." And I was lucky to get to have a conversation with him, and I said, "Can you give any, good travel advice?" He said, "I'm not very good at travel or career advice." I said, "No, what about life advice?" He goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "Go where they don't want you." That's what he tends to do. He started as a Peace Corps volunteer the year it started in 1963. I think he was in Mali in Africa, but from there, that's what got him started, going places, a unique adventure experience. I'll give you a real quick one here. He was in a war-torn country in Africa, and a way to avoid being shot, even though he was not the intended target, was he stationed himself between cows on a cattle train. He said, the rebels will shoot people, but they're not going to shoot their own food. So he was safe between the cows. And that's the kind of life he's led. Okay. So just a little more here, and we'll move to our look at our wonderful four countries. Let's go back just a little bit. Diplomacy in the 18th century. You had to balance directness with adaptability. And because we're going to end with him as a little preface here of this with Benjamin Franklin, let's talk about the conflict between John Adams and Benjamin Franklin. They were so opposite. Adams was not well liked. He was a great lawyer. He was very logical and forceful. He was the second president. John Quincy Adams, his son, became president as well. But Franklin did a whole different thing. Apart from being appointed as a diplomat, he was largely he was building to being a citizen diplomat, our ultimate goal. He was beloved in the court of Versailles with the king in Paris. The people loved him. They even made porcelain plates with his picture, and they called him Dr. Franklin. He had no college education at all, but he was called Dr. Franklin because he made an effort. So let's just take a look at how he did that. If you will allow me here, I'm going to show you a brief clip of this is Paul Giamatti playing John Adams and Tom, I'm sorry, I forgot his last name, playing Franklin. And they're arguing in the court of Versailles here. I think it is in the court of Louis XVI, the one who will eventually be executed. But they're arguing about right after the American Revolution how you should conduct yourself in your ambassadorship, in your diplomacy. And it's pretty valuable here to see this enacted. Oops. Oh, Tom Wilkinson. Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't remember. Thank you for that. He's really quite good. So you see him there walking off in a huff. They hear him. And we'll see here, he looks from behind, he looks just like one of them. Franklin looks different. Franklin takes a different tact altogether. History tells us that played out the best. Uh, so we'll just very briefly, I don't need to cover all of this, just to recap what he said, how he's described, Adams is described by Franklin. But he says a good diplomat observes much, acts little, and speaks softly. Yeah, we have to cover this. We cover assertive communication and empathetic listening in communication classes. Those are the two best skills I have. And they actually have to practice those for a grade. To be an empathetic listener, to not give advice, not to talk over, and to be assertive where need be. Assertive, which means having a conversation. It's attacking. If you attack anything, you attack a problem. You don't attack the person. Adams wasn't interested in that. He thinks, as at least a stereotype of a lawyer thinks, of what's logically on the page. But Franklin was far from that. You could have gotten far. You couldn't have gotten further from that. He understood that it was about dining and toasting. Adams would have said, "Is the food good, and is it good for us, or something?" Eating and drinking. You're not there to eat and drink. You're there to dine and toast. It's all part of the social experiment. And in fact, you might ask yourself, who would you send? In fact, Franklin was sent in the long run. He was better at this, and then Jefferson, etc. But he was better at it. I want you to notice here he wore plain country fur coats and hats, and we don't mean like we mean like you're so poor you have to hunt the animal yourself to wear clothing. He had hats, fur hats, sent from the U.S. to France while he was there in Paris. Imagine that. This is an Amazon. It'll take weeks or months, because they expect him to look like a rustic American. And by looking that way, he was able to get in the door and then have a conversation. And that's what we're doing here today. It's not what to say you're having a conversation about. It's about getting in the door so you can have the conversation. So you gotta scope the place out. He clearly had done this. He knew a lot of people. They really liked him. He really liked them. There was nothing false about that. He wasn't trying to get his way. He really was friends with people. It wasn't transactional just to get something. Okay, so let's talk here before we dig in. Why Austin sister cities matter? Well, you're already here, so you already know, but let's just do a nice recap anyway. There's a chance for cultural exchange, of course. So, for example, at our central library, it's wonderful. We have educational partnerships, there's business partnerships, but citizen diplomats are made through these and even through lifelong friendships. Ultimately, it's about a human being knowing another human being. There is no culture without the individuals there. It's the same as language. You can't have language without the speakers. It doesn't exist without them. If there are no speakers, there's no language. There's no people, there's no culture. And these are the people you're friends with. Okay, so let's get into our first country here. Let's talk a little bit about Turkey. You can apply what we've learned. I particularly, you'll notice I'll do as my opening slides. I love street scenes at night in various countries. I've even done proposals for grants to do, just study night culture. It can be pretty fascinating how people are different when the sun begins to set, and it has set. Okay, one of the first things is, you may have known, we have issues. We talked in our previous session about Taiwan. Well, some countries don't recognize Taiwan because of China. China doesn't recognize Taiwan. And there's at least one country, I believe it's Bhutan, who doesn't recognize China or Taiwan. It's problematic. It's problematic. Korea, we talked about, do we call it South Korea or Korea? We have our issue here, though, with Turkey is, do we call it Turkey or do we call it Turkey? Now, I'll tell you linguistically, one of the first things you learn is there are official things. Prescription will say what something should be called, but description is what's popularly done. So in language, if a word is spoken enough, it becomes part of the language. That's descriptive. That's what linguistics looks at. It's not judging it. It's just saying, well, it's a word now. Well, Turkey's kind of is in flux right now. It's in flux with the government wanting to get away from a word that sounds like the name of a bird, or more to the point, we say something is a turkey because it's bad, and that doesn't play well for the Turkish government. So I just want to show you a brief clip that collects a little here So you can decide if someone around you is saying turkey, certainly feel free to mirror that. That's called mirroring the language. If they say turkey, you can say turkey. It's not insulting. You're just doing what people do. So let's just take a look at what the scenario is now. All right. So this is something you just have to keep up with, right? Just check your phone, look at news stories. And in particular, not really time here for it today, but they have interviews with people on the street from various countries that are in Turkey. What do you call the country? And, well, really all of them call it Turkey. That's what they learned. Changes are slow, even if it's declared. So there we go. So, but because it's the most popular term, I've left it as the original Turkey here. Um, And let's see here. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what we want to look at here is greeting, meeting, dining, and refining as our basic components. So greeting and meeting are a little bit different because there are first impressions when you first see someone else in the culture, especially your partner that you might meet with. Remember that you only get one chance for a first impression. And the first thing they see is what you're wearing. So attire, you want to be careful. You've carefully packed your suitcase or suitcases. Um, and there is a blend of professional and casual attire, especially in urban areas. Business casual is widely accepted. That's nice to know. Now, at least for menswear, that can mean you wear suit separates, a jacket and pants, and a shirt and tie. If it becomes a little more casual, you can take the tie off. If it's hotter, etc., you watch what other people do and you might take the jacket off. The point is, you always want to aim for more formal because you can go less formal right in the spot. You don't have to go somewhere to change. But if you start less formal, you can't move up, right? Now, worst, you're better dressed, you're more formally dressed. People think you have somewhere important to go, right? But you don't want to seem like, as the term goes, a stuffed shirt. We have that expression for a reason. So be aware, ask people, notice what people are wearing. It shifts, especially post pandemic. We're still in a world where often ties are not worn and instead say a nice silk pocket square, which is nice. You'll notice for the first time in the history of our ties that we have about 100 years, they're not getting bigger and smaller, and they usually match the size of a lapel. We're still at a thin tie stage. It never went back to a big tie because, frankly, people aren't really buying many ties anymore. They wear what they have. But you can go a long way with that. Now, women have some more options here, but you do have to be careful. Women in particular, you want to cover your shoulders, arms, and legs. And I think one is above knee level is what it means. You can show lower legs. When in doubt, check it out and see what people are doing. And why not buy something local? You can ask the person in there, what should I buy? So bring one less outfit and buy one more. Isn't that wonderful? I love to shop in other places just to see what they buy. And by the way, if you want to fit in more, just so that you don't have odd things standing out. I'll give you an example. In cold weather climates, there are three options. You can wear a Columbia style outdoor coat. You can wear a wool coat that's a little more formal, or you can wear like a puffer jacket, and that varies. For example, when I was in Tokyo, it was in December, it got kind of cold. And I had like a wool coat, and I'm like, nobody's wearing this. So I went to a Uniqlo and bought a puffer jacket. It was great. Likewise, when I was in Ireland and it was cold in the winter, I came with like a Columbia outdoors jacket, which is great for trails and that sort of thing. But they tended to be a little dressier. So I remembered that, and I have a nice dark blue wool overcoat. So, check on that. Look at videos. Just look it up a little bit. Talk to people. You may not want to pack multiple. Puffer jacket packs real easily. It's light, can ball up, fit very little space. So be aware of the surroundings. Check that weather. For example, Asia can be very, monsoon season in summer can be very humid and feel hotter than it does right here in Texas. So check it out before you go. Usually with all our locations, you're not going to go wrong with neutral colors and a neat appearance. So sort of a charcoal gray, a dark navy, that sort of thing. Okay. There is business casual. It just depends on whether you're in urban areas or in smaller places. Also, Turkey varies. If it's further in the east, it tends to be more formal. Further west, literally in Asia, it's more formal. And in the part that's in Europe, it's a little more casual. Of course, you want to leave your shoes outside of mosque and homes. If you see shoes out there, it means take your shoes off. You don't have to be the first one. You probably don't have to ask. If you're with someone, watch what they do. Let them start. Let them in front of you. You know how you race for a door? Don't do that. Let them go to the door first, and you're just fine. It could be in some places you're offered slippers. This might be a day to wear some nice, good socks. You don't want to walk around with holes in your socks and that sort of thing. Okay. Punctuality is very important because before you meet someone to still about reading, make sure to plan it. Make sure it's around holidays. Even if you have holidays you're used to, perhaps you should know not plan it around, for example, Ramadan, if it's holidays based on another religion that you're not used to seeing that structures your days. It could even be something smaller. When I lived in Belgium, I didn't realize that Christmas and St. Nicholas Day were different. I think it's December 6th. They're different days. Even in Canada, they have Victoria Day. Check for that because you don't want to sound like you're imposing because it's a holiday. Check the holiday calendar for them, for Turkey. Make sure to be on time. We already know this. Look, you can always arrive early into any country, but you can sit in the lobby or sit outside, catch your breath. You never know how long transportation is going to take. Don't stress yourself. We talk about this in public speaking. People don't really know the difference between heat sweat and flop sweat. If you're sweaty from running or you're in the heat or racing to get there, it looks to other people like you're nervous, that you don't want to be there. So go ahead and be there early. You can look on your phone, bring something to read, or what I like to do is not to read anything and to watch the people around me and see what they're doing. And you never know, you might meet somebody in a building. Trust me, the receptionists know everybody and everything. Be nice to them. Okay. You want to make sure you have printed materials in English and Turkish. You start with small talk. It's about relationship building before you get to business. This is true in a lot of countries. It's worth the extra days. Maybe you can comp the hours before you go at the office on your job. You need time. You can't go on flying out today. You just can't do that. You need to build this, maybe not in one trip, but in one trip. Space it out a little bit if you can. Okay, the first thing you read is contact. This varies from culture to culture. This may seem really tiny, but it's very important. How long do you hold the grip? Do you maintain eye contact? And how firm is the grip? These are things you need to know. Because in the US, if the grip's not strong enough, it seems weak. If you don't look somebody in the eye, it seems suspicious. In some other cultures, for example, in Asia, if you do hold eye contact, it makes it look like you're trying to be domineering. You have to be very careful. Why don't you try it out with someone? When you're checking out the new outfit in the store, why don't you ask the clerk? You say, thank you. and let them show you how to shake hands. They'd love to show you. They get a delight out of that, and you'll learn it firsthand. Use your right hand for everything, not your left hand. There's also a particular thing, some cultures like in Turkey, the hand over the heart. It has several meanings. It can mean sincerity, gratitude, respect. It can be done at the same time as a handshake, and just notice what's around you. There are also hugs and cheek kisses. Oh, this is a tough one. I found this in Belgium and France too. If you get it wrong, cheek kiss and all that, I would say go ahead and check some videos out for that online and notice the people in front of you. Do not be the first in line. Watch what people do because it varies according to whether it's a man and woman or two women or two men, for example. What is allowed? Probably knowing people right off, this is not something you do. It would be the international handshake, but again, firmness, grip, eye contact matter. Often you use Bey for Mr. and Hanim for Ms. So you might say John Bey, Mr. John, and use titles. This is very important. People like to know. I have students, we're 6 weeks into the summer session and they still don't know my name. They still call me Mr. and that's not my name. You know, it is Doctor. It's just, that is my name. That's not trying to make a presence. It's just, that is my name. So it's respectful for something that's free to get the names right. So of course, gifts, check this out. This changes. Be careful about colors and certain gifts. Every culture has these. What should be allowed, what's not, just look it up. Of course, still business cards. We're in a world where we want to go to QR codes and it's digital. But from what I can tell, there's still no problem with having a nice cotton bond, cotton fiber, nicely printed note card that has information in both languages here. That means you have to have cards made just for your Turkish partners. Yes. That way, if nothing else, at the end of the day, they put their phone away. They've got that physical evidence of you. You see here, multicolored. It's an odd shape, isn't it? It could be multiple colors. It could be embossed and that sort of thing. It's not very expensive, right? With Vistaprint and other companies. So make sure, present with your right hand or both hands. It's the first thing they have physically from you. You want to get it right. Okay. Dining, often shared meals, good manners, beverages, and there's toasts, respect, goodwill. Now, Turkey's an odd country because, thank you. Do watch the replay. Thank you for that. There is a particular, there are actually alcoholic beverages that are particular to Turkey. It's an odd mix of the secular and the religious. You don't have to worry. See what other people do. When in doubt, don't bring alcohol. Just see what other people do. Okay. And finally, women in business. There's still traditional roles. Turkey is in flux, though. And again, East and West in Turkey, the literal crossing of Asia and Europe there across the Bosporus and Dardanelles and all. You want to go Western style. So there's a mix of being female, but also having somewhat a sense of power. Okay. Now let's move to our sister sitter here, Antalya. It's a Turkish Riviera gym. There's lots of wonderful things about it. If this is the only place you're going, you're in luck. It's beautiful. It won't be Ankara. It won't be Istanbul, but it has its own wonderful beauty here. It's founded in the 2nd century BC. Year-round sunshine. Sounds wonderful. All right, now let's move to Thailand, if you would. And I'm just going to bustle this along a little bit. Again, attire, the usual thing. Dark suits, maybe lighter shirts, tie. You can always take it off, the tie off if need be, and go down in level from semi-formal to formal. My students think semi-formal, they think that means business casual. Remember, formal is a tux, semi-formal is a suit. Business casual is what I have today, a button, a collared shirt and a jacket, right? So it's probably a little more formal than you think. But you can get a lot of mileage out of one suit and 3 shirts. Fits right in that suitcase, rolls up nicely. Make sure to, of course, before you meet someone, it's rude make sure to get those shoes off. Now, when I saw my friend in Thailand and Taiwan last year, I was so tired from traveling, and I was meeting his wife and everything. And it's like first thing she said is take off your shoes. I didn't even think about it. I was so tired, right? But I was the only one coming in. Watch what other people are doing and take those shoes off. It keeps the house clean. But don't look for logic behind it. The point is, it's just the tradition. Honestly, I have no excuse because I do that in my own home. I don't wear shoes in the house. Okay. Now, a big thing in Thailand is, do you use a handshake or what's called the Y here, W-A-Y? You might start with a handshake, and then as you get to know people more, the bow is more common, and they can be done somewhat together. You really do have to watch this because it varies according to levels of a relationship. It's more natural after you've established a relationship, and there are levels. The further you bow, the more respectful. The third in particular is a little more royalty or religious. You're probably pretty good with one. Just up there, you don't necessarily have to touch your nose. But the fact that you're doing it and you're the foreigner shows all manner of respect. So the first one there, just the slightest, can be quite polite. Business cards again, both hands or the right hand. Make sure, like anywhere, that you don't bend it or anything. Bring two card cases, one for your cards and one for the ones you are collecting. I don't know if leather might work. I have two metal cases. They're very small. They fit in a messenger bag. Be on time. Start with informal small talk. Don't jump right to business. They want to know who you are. Dining, you can actually push food onto a spoon. People go, wait, it's Thailand. Not really a chopstick place as much. So, but you'll know that. You'll go to a restaurant and you'll see what's available. Okay. Now, as one of our consultants wanted to point out, be very aware of spice levels. You know this in the US. If it's at a 4 out of 5, you want to avoid spicy. This is not a chance to be experimental when you're meeting with other people. Do it on that day when you're not meeting anyone. Ordinarily, the top level is for locals. The same in the US. If you go to a Thai restaurant run by Thais, level 5 is going to be hot. And I've done it myself. I will say I would love spicy food. But take it down a notch, especially before a meeting. Remember, you're not there to eat, you're there to dine. It's to be social. You can eat on your own time. In fact, before you eat, bring a snack bar, a kind bar, a protein bar, or something. Because if you come in hungry, all you can think about is eating. That's the nature of your organism, right? So get something to eat. Never walk into a meal hungry and never walk out of a meal stuffed, right? Somewhere in the middle. And yeah, you might go here mild, medium, maybe spicy, but you don't want to go higher. You can't go back down once it's at too high a level and you're going to be hungry because you couldn't eat it. Okay. Again, our typical women in business, modest speech is valued over assertiveness, the opposite of the US. If you're going to succeed in business, you need to be as assertive as a man. And a woman is called bad names when she's assertive. But this is very important. This is the subtlety for Thailand. Our sister city, Chiang Mai, is quite wonderful here. A lot of things you can do. If you don't get to the big ones, you don't get to Bangkok or Phuket or whatever, look what you get to do here. This is pretty wonderful. It's the old royal capital of the Lana Kingdom. It's an old city. We've got some wonderful sister cities here. Okay, now let's look at India. You're thinking, how are we going to cover India that fast? Don't worry, we will, especially Pune. So briefly, and I'm sure Aditi could join in on this a lot. Remember, this is a very big country. It is now bigger than China. It's the biggest country in the world population. It's very large. It's like coming to the US. I went to New York and Florida and California. Well, then you don't really understand Illinois. Be aware of both the industry of people you're talking in and the climate of where it is, because what you wear can vary a lot. Now, if you look at the gentleman on the left and then the third over or second over, you'll notice you can progressively take off a jacket or a tie. The same thing with the young woman here. You might take off your jacket. If you're not sure, start with formal, but check out for the region. Just look it up. Go into a clothes shop and ask, say, what should I wear here? They want to sell you something. But see what's going on. I always leave space in my suitcase because I love to buy an article of clothing in that country, even not another country. If you go to Hawaii, leave some space for an aloha shirt because that is the business wear in Hawaii. So notice where it is, especially in the right here, technology. The tech bros might do the same as they do in Palo Alto and the same in Bengaluru, which I understand since 2014 is the name of Bangalore. But nonetheless, that is industry specific. Women actually mix more than just about any culture we look at here. There may be a mix of a sari and a blazer, fusion styles, or a sweater and a SWAT sari, etc. Look it up, go into a shop, talk to people before you go there. You're probably less likely to wear Indian attire, but you're aware and you won't feel out of place because not everybody will be dressed that way. You'll even notice words like kurta here, even different words for different types of clothing. More than I think any of our other cultures, this is true. You see it in Austin, where there's probably more adherence to traditional styles. Here, much less India. So, so it's both a tradition and innovation together. There's some good choices. Indian attire is welcome. So this is the thing about as a Westerner, what you wear. So you will be seen as Western anyway, but the level of formality is the issue, really, that you keep at the right level. It's the vertical, not the horizontal of the cultures. It's the vertical. Be aware of times for things. It's different in different places. Pune is the city of early risers. People are up as early as 6 a.m. because of educational, military, and manufacturing culture. But other people are not in until 9:30 or 10 to work. So be aware of where you are. It's not a unitary culture, of course. A monoculture, as they say. A big thing is namaste. Handshakes are the norm. But is it okay to know? This is something we think it must be Indian. We want to do it. It comes from our yoga culture. And I'm just going to skip I've got a nice video here for you of what that's like. So it's used in the home, greeting elders and seniors. This actually had a big play during the pandemic because it's a way not to touch people. 5 people across the table, you could use namaste with all of them. I think we're still in flux there. That may become more of a norm rather than handling other people, sanitary, proximity, one at a time. This is faster. But that may be in flux. Let's see what happens. Okay. And you may know he's frozen there. What happened? There we go. The yes head shake. I found that people that are Indian, even if they haven't lived in India in years, may do this, but Americans never do. So this one's kind of hard to see, but yes and no are not universal. Remember, nonverbals, as well as verbal like language, is not universal. It's learned in a culture. So just be aware of what's yes and no. Okay, there's definitely formalities here. A respectful prefix is G, like Sharma G, Lumi G, Auntie G. It's like saying son in Japanese. Again, business cards offer to the senior person, English, just plain English on the card. Nice cards. It may have QR codes. They could put them on the card or the back of the card, and you have both covered. I know people that have their own business cards and actually have a QR code on the back so you can get more info. And that's not even for business. Of course, a lot of rules. We know Indian food is a very different type of food, right? Cuisine right here in the US. It can be very different. But remember that food changes about every 200 kilometers. It's a big country in people and in land mass. So be aware. Often the foods we have in the US come only from certain places. Just like people come to the US, they think everything is New York and California, and of course it's not. So be aware. Be aware of that. If you can make requirements here, one thing I love about Indian food is you can easily choose whether it's vegetarian or has meat or chicken, etc., or fish. Now, women are not equal. There is a glass ceiling, but they can still go to lunch, for example, split the bill, and that works just fine. Pune, the Oxford of the East, quite beautiful, especially as an educational capital here. A lot of landmarks. Okay, very quickly, I know we're rough out of time. This is what I have the least about, really, is Lesotho, because it's a very small country. and Maseru, the capital's biggest city, but also very small. We're lucky to have this connection to a place that I'm going to guess most Americans have never even heard of. It's our only country that's like this. And in fact, I have a video here I could play for you right here. So I just want to show you that in fact it's spelled with O's, but they're pronounced like U's. It's Lesotho for whatever, and you say to, not thu. So it's probably our only country where people would say, I've never heard of it, and also don't know how to pronounce it, right? Simply having knowledge of a place like that really shows respect, gets you in the door so you can have whatever conversation you want to have. Business attire can actually be more formal than in the US. So a jacket and a tie, women, a business dress. But there's also some mix of traditional and modern clothing. For example, the Basotho blanket can be worn with a suit, and you see it here without suits. Traditional tribal sort of wear, not unlike India, where the traditional and modern, or shall we say, international mix. Look at videos, check it. You probably would not wear that. I have a friend from Hungary visited. First thing I want to do is buy a cowboy hat, wanted to wear it out. I'm like, you're not going to do that. It just didn't look right. Just don't know how to explain it. Just doesn't look right. Even sometimes wearing a baseball cap, say, well, you're not American. That just somehow doesn't look right. So you want to err on the side of being as neutral as possible. And of course, women also have this mix here. I'll just show you very quickly. Look at these wonderful mix of styles and fashion and how they can come together. Very distinctively Lesotho. Okay. Greeting could be with, as you see here, a little bow, hand on the heart, etc. Again, a mix of a sort of bow and a handshake. Again, note cards, business cards. Be punctual, but patient. You may be the first one there. Always acknowledge seniority. There's a little more formality to the Lesotho. And we could talk about manners here. Wash your hands first. And different kinds of foods that you're probably not familiar with, like moroho or greens and that sort of thing. Women, there are expectations. They're expected to dress modestly, err on the side of formality, a little more, not a little less. And our sister city, the biggest city in the capital, it's right over the border from South Africa, which is completely surrounded by it. There are only 3 countries in the world like that. 2 are in Italy, and then we have Lesotho right smack in the middle of South Africa. All right, here is our history here. I'm sorry, I know we're running a little short here. Are countries that don't really seem at first glance to have a lot in common, but there are a few things. There are a few things in common. But different areas, different ethnicities, different languages, different religions. Okay, now let's talk about your quiz score. If you could just quickly tally how many A, B, C's, and D's and E's you have. They're scrambled here just a little bit if you want to count them. But I have them in order of what they are. If you got mostly C's, you're sort of a tourist. If you got D's, you're an explorer. If you got A's, you're a traveler. You're halfway there. If you got E's, you're more of a trusted guest. And if you got more B's, that's the arguably the hardest is you've become more of a citizen diplomat. You are building bridges here. So anyway, you can just take a look at that if you have a moment. Let me just have a couple more minutes here. And if there are any questions. If you did do the quiz, again, these are stages, but it doesn't really mean necessarily one is better than the other. I admire Rick Steves because he's gotten people off their couches and onto beautiful seaside villages in Italy, not unlike we saw with Ray. That is his goal. That is his place. In all fairness, he just came out with a book this year. He used all the journals he wrote when he was in college doing the hippie trail, which goes all the way from Europe into the Himalayas. It's really good. You get a chance to read it. And because he's a host, I did the audio book. It's great because you get to hear him talk about being basically a kid and traveling through what today we would think of as dangerous areas, living on very little just to get across uh, Europe, Central Asia, and Asia. It has its place. All of these have their place. Your goal, though, is to get to the trusted guest, which hopefully will lead you into being a citizen diplomat for our sister cities. Now, if you'll allow me here, I have just one more video clip to show you very quickly. Let me see. We just have just a few minutes. This is the end of this episode in Italy, where Ray has transformed. His 2 weeks off, he was wasting on Italy. He thought, I want you to see what's happened to Ray in this small town here. Hold on, if you'll just bear with me. It'll just take a second. Get to it. Okay, hold on just 1 minute. And let me stop sharing. And let me maximize for optimize. Oops. Let me oh, hold on just a second. Let me optimize for sound here, if you would. Here we go. This is delightful. It's worth the trip here just to see Ray enjoy his trip. There you go. Ray has transformed himself. He found the beauty. Just in the interest of time, I didn't show it. He found the beauty. The first thing he noticed was how people wrap flowers there. They ride bikes around. It's not for exercise. It's to get around town. Oh, and by the way, thanks for noting in there. I'm just to back up here just a second. Aditi, I believe you said A's and E's. There you go. Well, those are in order. That's the third and fourth level, mostly a travel and a trusted guest. What was the other one here? Mostly D's. You're an explorer. Okay, the step beyond. But we did not really have mostly tourists. Generally, you're not going to be citizen diplomat. We were aiming for explorer, traveler, trusted guest, a D, A, or E, and that we had. That's good. Okay, so to conclude this a little bit, this is a real scene. This is a generated image because I didn't take a picture because I was in the moment, sitting in this nice bar, Temple Bar in Dublin, and looking at the street and noticing this garbage truck is tiny because they're different there because the streets are small. And I'm like, that truck is in the way of my view. But remember, we saw Paris. How are you going to learn about the culture if you don't see how there must have been 3 or 4 workers on that truck all working together to pick up garbage as fast as possible? I'd never seen that before. And it was very small because the streets are small. So it wasn't in the way of the experience. It was the experience. And that's why I remember it today to share it with you. That nice bar or store will be behind the truck. That's behind the truck now will be there in a minute. You just have to take a breath and go, what I'm seeing here is the real Dublin. They have garbage trucks too. Okay. So you can reflect on your own observations. Say on a typical morning where your defenses are down, you're sluggish. Those can be some of the best times of day. And also to see people because they're not at a business lunch. No one has business breakfasts. So you get to see people in their natural setting. I loved it because I'm a tea drinker. You say tea, miraculously, a pot of tea appears on the table and you don't have to explain that you don't want it in a tea bag. And I love that. Okay. Now let's go to our final thing here, if you would, please, for just a minute. We're here right at 1 o'clock. Aspiring for a B. There you go, Adine. Yep, that's right. It comes naturally. You can't skip stages. You have to go through. Now, let's think like Ben Franklin. Here's a modern Ben Franklin in a cafe. He changed his clothes a little bit. He looks like an average American. He's even got the good sense to have a pocket square. That's always a nice thing. But so notice as you move, you go from seeing it, asking about it, understanding it, welcomed into it. And that's the trusted guest, not just a guest, trusted guest. And that you connect cultures. There are bridges. It connects Austin to your sister city. You are a representative of where you're from, just as they're a representative of where they're from. So if you're at the level of trusted guest, you're doing very, very well. And that is where we are ending here. So thank you for your time. I try to build a modern city here to step away from our Hagia Sophia at our beginning. So this is a mix of things. I'm not sure if it looks like Malaysia a little bit, but if you want to stay in touch, please write me. at kclark@austinCC.edu, or write to Aditi or any of our partners, and they can get in touch with me. Thank you for joining us. Does anybody have any questions or concluding thoughts? And thank you for being here. And if you're watching this recorded, thank you too. I can't think of anything better for a Friday morning, Friday at lunchtime, than talking about other places while having a nice beverage.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Clark. And I have dropped an email to connect to programs at austinsistercities.com with feedback. And Rebecca will be able to share any feedback we receive from this session or from when the training is uploaded to YouTube, as our training is available on demand. So any feedback we receive, we will incorporate it in for our next session on Turkey, India, Thailand, and Lesotho for 2027. And with that, thank you everyone for joining us, and have a good weekend.
Thank you. Have
Thank
a good
you.
weekend. I'll see you next time around. We'll be looking at Europe and Australia, and that comes up in
Absolutely.
3 weeks.
In 3 weeks. Take care.